Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Open Discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we are going to be talking about the final season of Barry, which is the entirety of Barry is done now. So there's a good chance that we are going to talk about events not only from season 4 of Barry, but 1 through 3 as well. So this is a massive spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It's a great show, and then come back and see what we have to say about it. But let's go ahead and jump right into it, Cheryl. Um, I guess it's hard for me to even know where to start with this final season. I think I'll just start with my feeling when the credits rolled. And I watched it late at night because I like watching like some of these shows that we talk about. Like I like watching them late at night. It just like adds a vibe for me. And I watched that final episode, and when the credits rolled, I was like, I just sat there in silence, like, I need a hug. I need a hug, or I need something. I think the ending is like legitimately a great ending, but oh my god, it is bittersweet as hell. It is not a happy ending, it is a good ending, but it is not a happy ending. And like just sitting there, I was just flabbergasted and I just was like taking it in and just like holy wow, and I just kind of absorbed it. And like afterwards I went and I think I like watched something funny or something before I go into bed, but like the initial feeling that left me was just oh my gosh, what did I just watch?
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, did I watch Barry because of you? Is
Yes.
that the oh
It was
wow.
my idea because season 4 was or like season 3 had just wrapped or something like that, and we were all like catching the tail end of it. So you got to watch all of it at once, whilst I had to wait every season for all the episodes to come out. So, but yeah.
Yeah, see, you know what's funny? I did not have to because of you. I literally watched guys, I literally watched season 1 through 3 in like a week and then only had to wait a week to start watching season 4. So I did not have to go through any of the pain that all of you had to go through watching it year to year. But I did wait once I got to the time skip, which we'll talk about in a little bit. When I got to the time skip, that's when I actually stopped watching Barry so that the episodes could stack on, and then that way I could just like watch the rest on my own time, like without having to wait for them to come out. But yes, I feel very blessed to have been able to experience Barry in that way because that is a crazy show.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like as a whole, I really love Barry. I think it's such a good series. It's so funny and it's so dark and it's so like crazy. It's like almost feel like I can't ask for more in a show. Um, that's like not from a franchise, I guess. But I mean, it just like it's just so good, and like people aren't that creative with like how they write anymore because I think like we're just so used to watching the same old formula of show and like movie, and for once like it's this is like a whole series where like you really have no idea what's gonna happen. Like anything can happen, and anything does happen. Anything and everything happens in this show. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like I liked it so much. Just always kept me on my toes, and like it, and I want to say it again because you know we've already had other episodes that cover the previous seasons and episodes of Barry, but like they're super short. They're like 30. They average to be about 30 minutes an episode,
Yeah.
and there's so many things that happen in one episode. You forget that it's not an hour long because of how concise it is. They spent just the right amount of time to have something happen and still have these moments, like these lingering moments for you to feel what the characters are feeling when they're feeling something, especially strong. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the writing, the acting, it's really good,
Yeah.
guys. Really good.
The the acting was on full on display in this last episode. There's so many moments when it's just kind of like You sit the camera in front of the actor and you just let them go. I mean, Sally got a nice little moment with her son like that. Um, Fuchs got a nice little moment while talking to NoHo, like, and they both just like had the camera just on them, super close, kind of uncomfortable, but it's no cutting. Like, if there is cutting, it's just like in the case of Fuchs and NoHo, it's just cutting back and forth between them, but it's not like crazy cutting. It's just like basically two shots, and they're just letting these characters act and go through the emotions and feel it, and you do feel it. And I I think Barry started out funny. I was not laughing by the last half of Barry. Like, Barry starts off where you see when the title comes up, they play like this loud kind of jazzy music that then like, abruptly cuts off and everything, and then the endings would have like loud and crazy music. But in the final season of Barry, I feel like almost every episode just started with no music, just the title, and when the episodes ended, it was either silence or it was either like a dark theme playing underneath the credits. And so
Mm-hmm.
literally almost every ending of Barry, I'm just sitting there just like, what is happening in this show?
That is how I feel. I'm always like, what did I just see? What did I just watch? It's like insane the kind of things that they allow to happen on TV. I mean, it's HBO, but like you thought, other shows like House of the Dragon and like Game of Thrones is crazy. This is like a level up, I think, because it's not a fantasy. Like these are, real time folks and like what?
Yeah. And one thing they always want to do is like Barry is always about like not shying away from like the realistic depiction of violence. So like anytime they have these kind of moments when there are shootouts or people dying, like they try to ground them as much in reality as they can. I think the most fantastical that we've kind of seen has been like two situations. One where Barry was with the Marine and they were going through and clearing like a warehouse by themselves. Like you could say like maybe that's a little fantastical because it's two men versus like an entire like warehouse of people. And then of course the time when Barry just kind of goes on a shooting spree when he goes and invades like the place where NoHo and Cristobal are because he's trying to like kill Fuchs. And that's like when another one where it's just like one person just like on a shooting rampage against a bunch of people that could potentially fight him back, but he's just killing everybody. But like, yeah, in this final episode where you have Fuchs and Hank talking to each other right before like, and then the shootout happens. Like, it is quick. People drop, and then it's over, and it's like that, and it's crazy. It's one take. The camera does not move. It just sits right there, and then you see all the violence happen, and then and you notice that Fuchs like covered up the sun, and then when it slowly starts walking out, that's when the camera moves, but it moves from that original position, and then it just pans over all of the destruction that just happened because of that shootout until they walk out the door, and there's the cut. Like that is another thing about Barry. Barry isn't just great because of the fact that it has great acting and great writing. It has great like just cinematography. It has great choices that are being made. It has great music. Like the music in Barry is so tense and so good to the point where like for one of my editing projects when I was laying in a temp track and they were having kind of this dark thing, I went and just got music from Barry because Barry is like that good. So like it's really the total package when it comes to shows.
Yeah, I was actually gonna bring up some memorable moments from the editing, the cinematography and editing from this last season. Um, I think one of the ones that like really caught my eye was when they were outside the mansion and that was when NoHo Hank shot like bazookas at or like rockets at the mansion where Fuchs was staying at, and then like you could see, you know, like it's super long, and I love things where we have just one camera angle or like one camera shot, and it's like hella long. It's like minutes. Because
Yeah,
those are super hard to do, and they had one of those, and I think they've had a bunch of
a
those
couple.
throughout
Yeah,
like the seasons. But this one was really cool because it starts like up close and then it goes all the way down the show. It starts as a close up and then it ends up as a long shot because you have NoHo Hank down at the bottom of the hill, but you can hear what's happening down there because Fuchs is on the phone with him.
And we're over Fuchs' shoulder at that point. So like now
Yeah.
he's the close up element where it's like looking over his shoulder at like this huge wide. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really beautiful shot. And you know, it's daring to do something like that because it's so hard to pull off, but that was just so carefully planned and everything. Like it's just so you would think that it's easy because they make it look so easy. Like, you know, let's spend less time, you know, with all these
Hmm.
crazy angles and all these crazy shots and just put it right here and let's do all this in one go. But it's not because those are actually harder to do
They
because it
really are,
takes
and the lighting too.
yeah.
Yeah. And they were
And
outside.
they were outside, right? Yeah.
so, so we both know. Yeah, and we're kind of jumping around a little bit. Let's start talking about like kind of the story, the through line of the season, and then kind of like take it from there. But one of the things about this season was when season 3 ended, it ended with Barry trying to kill Janice's dad. I forget his name. But he was going to kill Janice's dad, and then it was a trap, and Kusuno was a part of it, and so Barry is arrested, and so we start the season with Barry basically in jail, and we talked about this in one of our videos where we were kind of talking about the beginning of this season, but at the part where what we discussed is no longer relevant, the Barry escapes from prison, and this was stuff that we didn't get to talk about in our discussion about the beginning of Barry season 4. So Barry actually escapes from prison, and then there's the next episode is an entire episode where Barry isn't in it. We actually don't see Barry in that episode until the very end, but it's kind of like the fallout. Like how do all these other people react to Barry being on the run? And it's really effective because we're thinking Barry is a surgical like genius with like in assassination or killing, and you're thinking to himself, he's going after Kusuno, or he's going after Sally just to like because he cares about her. So you're thinking he like one of these people, you know, is where he's going to end up. But it's really effective for Kusuno because Kusuno is afraid because Kusuno knows that Barry wants to kill him. So the entire time, and Hank also knows that Barry wants to kill him. So the entire time we're like really wondering, where is Barry going? What's he going to do? And then there's all this other stuff that happens in that episode. Stuff with Cristobal happens in that episode, and we can talk briefly about that in a moment. But that is like I really like that episode a lot. It's like one of the only episodes that the character of Barry is not in for most of it, but his presence is there, and that's what like really is effective about it.
Yeah, I actually thought it was crazy because it almost showed me like what their true characters were without Barry being there. Like because Barry is not in it, and they're all so uncertain that they have to fill in the blanks for themselves about what Barry is gonna do, and then you
Right.
can really see how they really think of him, but by doing so are really showing who like what type of person they are, which is like I have to look out for myself, or like
Yep.
I have to take precautions and stuff. And then we find out that actually Barry just wanted to
Leave.
like, you know, be away from everyone and just get away and like leave everyone alone because he's not really out to kill anyone. He just wants to
Hmm.
be free from
Yeah.
everyone except for Sally. But you know, if Sally didn't want him there, he'd be okay with it too.
Right. He was ready. He just needed a place to stay.
Yeah.
And so crazy things happen this episode. I mean, I think this episode's a really big turning point, um, because I feel like it was in this episode that, and I might be getting mixed up with this episode and the episode before this, but I feel like around this time is when Cristobal dies, and this comes after we find out that Hank literally set a trap for all of their friends and like killed them in like this sand hourglass almost. And I feel like we don't immediately know that that's why Hank is kind of like tripping. Like we think that Hank is like worried about Barry, but it's also the fact that Hank knows that he's about to kill all these people, and he does. And like it's kind of like that. Like Hank is an interesting character because Hank doesn't always fully. He's a villain, but he doesn't always step fully into villainy. He has villainous tendencies, but there's not too much that we could look back on where it's like he himself like did the terrible thing. Um, and this was his choice, and he it's really just sad because that moment when him and Cristobal are talking, and Cristobal's like, "I'm leaving you," and you see the look in the actor's face, you see the look in Hank's face where he realizes what that means, and all of a sudden he switches. He switches immediately from being like a character that's trying to win an argument to a character that's trying to save someone's life. And he's doing and it is a long and drawn out scene, and it's purposeful, and it feels like they're doing a lot of like going round and round in circles, but that's because that's what would happen. He is trying to do everything in his power because he knows the moment that he lets him go, that's the last time he's ever going to see him alive. And he's even trying to tell him, they won't let you leave me. They will not let you leave. And Cristobal is just not having it. And at the end, he can't stop him. And it's like the show is just so great for these quiet moments because then he walks out the door closes, we don't hear anything, and then the door opens back. There's an out of like a figure that's out of focus. We think it might be Cristobal again. I think if you really know, you know that it's not, but it's framed like it could be. And then he comes, and then next thing we know, we open the door, and Cristobal's lying on the ground dead, and that just like breaks Hank. And it's just like another example of just like a great turning point for that character. And it's also at that moment where I was just like, yeah, unfortunately, there's no way that Hank makes it out of this show alive. Like, I feel like Hank and Barry, and I thought Fuchs too. I felt like they all had to die before the end of the show. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and I do want to talk a little bit more about everyone's ending for
Hmm.
the finale, but I was gonna point out that like I agree with you. Like I could really tell that Hank was trying to tell Cristobal without telling him like you're gonna like if you don't stay you're gonna die. Um, and I mean I almost feel like it's a little odd that they kind of put him in this or like made his character do this because I feel like the push for him to do it wasn't strong enough
Right.
because it was really all of that was just happening like the reason why he killed everyone was because of one conversation that he had with the Chechen boss.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So and it like yeah and it's so easy to forget because it's only one scene and it's not that menacing, like they didn't like beat him up to force him to do it and he didn't like try to do everything else that he could to figure out what he could do. He just was told to do something and then he just went and did it and he didn't tell Cristobal and that was his mistake that he didn't tell
Hmm.
Cristobal about it. um but in that scene where he's walking back inside the house after Cristobal walks out and I don't know if you caught it, but Hank looks up
Yeah, he
into,
does. Yeah.
and I was like, oh man, yeah, he's definitely like there's snipers outside just waiting to like see if Cristobal's gonna walk out. So like I could definitely tell that this is going to be the end for Cristobal, and I was so sad because
I was sad too.
they're like the favorites, like the couple to be, like the
Yeah.
sweethearts of the show, and I was just super bummed about how that ended up. But you're right, because of that, there's no way that Hank could keep going. And like at some in some way he was gonna have to die. Um, and I guess going from there, let's just talk a little bit more about everyone's ending. I think one of the disappointments for me, not just that Cristobal and Hank didn't make it, but we had previously discussed in our previous episodes of Barry that all the characters suck. Like every
Yes.
single one of them suck. Um, and one of those people, actually two of those people, are Fuchs and Sally.
Sally, I knew you
And
were gonna bring up Sally.
they were the two that survived. And like, okay, Fuchs I could kind of see because he sort of gets his redemption
Redemption. Yeah.
because he saves John, Barry's son. And like they
Hmm.
kind of framed it in a way of like, well, he was supposed to be a good father figure for Barry, but he wasn't. So his way of redemption was to take care of John and save the son, which he did. But I thought that like that was not enough time for him to build it, especially since like this entire freaking series he was going back and forth about whether or not he was on Barry's side or against him.
Yes,
So
actually, yeah. One of the things I quickly want to say is just that the whole like, so the reason Barry works really well is because all four seasons are absolutely connected. The stuff from season one matters in season four. So like that's what's important. But it's easy to forget that Fuchs's actions are actually the reason why all of this stuff goes really, really wrong. Because Fuchs is the one that takes Barry to where Janice, or takes Kusuno to where Janice is buried, and tells Kusuno what he did, and that one action legitimately leads to Barry's death. And that's the
yes.
crazy thing. Like that's something that Fuchs did. So most of the problems, like, and then that's not to like take responsibility from Barry and stuff like that, but a good amount of the problems that happen from like season two onward are because of Fuchs.
I mean, this whole
Actually, even the
thing
fact
is,
that Barry, yeah.
yeah, he's the reason why Barry's an assassin in the first place. So,
Yes.
and not just that he was an assassin, but he was from the very beginning taking advantage of Barry and collecting money from him killing people while he's just the middleman. So,
Hmm.
the fact that freaking Fuchs survived was beyond me. I was like, how does it end like this? Why does he get to live? I thought he would die at the same time that Hank died.
Everyone else did, yeah.
That would be cool. And I thought Sally was gonna die there too. But then for her, like, she didn't have any redemption. Like she gave her son alcohol
Oh my God.
because he was crying too much. Like that is terrible parenting. Like you could tell that Barry was the one lifting all the weight in parenting the son. And like for her to be like, okay, I'm gonna take the boy away from you because you won't, step
Turn
it up
yourself
and
in.
turn yourself in. Like, not saying that either of them were great parents because both of them were not technically good people. But surprisingly, Barry, I feel like, is a better person than Sally, even though he is a murderer.
Yeah, and like it's so that one was a little strange for me too because I was like, okay, because I think Sally's like redemption was her like admitting to her son that she was a bad mom, and so then her and her son like have a very emotional like moment, and so when she looks at like the whole thing with Kusuno and she realizes that Kusuno is going to go to jail for the things that Barry did, and so she's telling him that he needs to turn himself in. It felt very sanctimonious coming from her. So I was actually almost kind of surprised that Barry didn't just immediately make the argument of, well, who's going to take care of our son? You? It's like because Barry's like a sweeter man, even though Barry's also like someone that tries to legitimize his reasons for doing the things that he wants to do, even though he knows that he shouldn't. Like him going to kill Kusuno, he's listening to these like pastors talk about murder just because he wants to hear someone tell him that it's okay to actually go ahead and murder him. So he basically is one of those people that searches the internet until he gets the answer that he wants, and then that's the one that he chooses to believe, no matter how much information he finds to the contrary. So Barry absolutely is 100% good at like convincing himself that he's in the right. He's very delusional in his belief on on who he is. So like Barry is like not to be like any responsibility taken from him. But it was really interesting from Sally for her to say that to him, knowing that he actually has been, for the most part, a better father than or better parent than she was able to be to their son. And even after the next time skip, it doesn't necessarily seem like things have gotten that much better.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, I feel like Sally is just a bad person, but Barry just needed, a therapist. He
Yeah.
had mental health issues, and I think it starts with the PTSD from being a Marine and everything, but then just everything else that happens to him after, and or even him as a child, and they explore that a lot in season 3, I think,
Hmm.
where his childhood was kind of messed up too. So it's not like, well, I mean, it is his fault, but he really just needed some help.
He needed someone that wasn't Fuchs in his life.
Yes, a
Like,
therapist.
I think that's like probably my biggest gripe is that Fuchs needed more of a. He needed more to happen to him because it's like literally the entire show exists because of him. It's called Barry, but Barry exists because of Fuchs
Hmm.
and Fuchs manipulation and Fuchs taking advantage of him. And even if he had just let Barry go and just be an actor, Barry's life would have been very different. But he kept wanting to pull Barry back in, and because he's so petty, he kept doing things that would affect Barry's life negatively, which is how like the escalation slowly happens over the seasons to the point where we get to where we end up for the show. And that I think that perfectly leads us into like what Barry's conclusion is, and the fact that Barry it almost looks like the show gives Barry an out, but it's very interesting in how it's set up because of the fact that Kusuno did not mention the fact that Barry tried to give him money in an effort to make things right. So for everyone else on the outside, it looks like Barry was doing jobs for Kusuno, and the story becomes that Kusuno actually had Janice killed by manipulating Barry to do it. So Barry is now looked at in the eyes of the world as a victim, and Kusuno as the mastermind. So now all of a sudden, Kusuno's life is over. His son hates him because we didn't mention this, but he shoots his son out of fear because he thinks his son is Barry, and we find out Barry was nowhere near Kusuno that entire time. But now the son thinks that he was shot because of the dirty money that Kusuno used to get the house and everything. And so when we see Kusuno, he looks like he's about to kill himself because his son doesn't love him. Janice is dead. He's about to go to jail for life. And he feels like there's nothing that he can do. And this is like one of those most beautiful, like one of the most beautiful moments of storytelling. And both by beautiful, I mean like awful, is the fact that Barry shows up after Sally leaves because he's looking for her, but the person that Kusuno hates is actually the person Kusuno needs the most because the only person that can get him out of that situation is Barry. And Barry is even willing to go ahead and take the fall once he realizes his family has left him. He is willing to go to jail, which will allow for Kusuno to have the life that he wants, but he immediately takes that option away from himself because he gives into his anger by immediately killing Barry the moment that he sees him, which even the way that was handled was like, wow, wow, just wow. So yeah, and like that's what Barry's conclusion is, and it makes sense. Barry had to go. He like had done too much. I always think back to the first season where he killed Chris. It's like that guy was someone that did not deserve to die, and you killed him. You did that out of self-preservation. You need to go. So I have no problem with that. But I think that it's very interesting that the next time skip we see how the world sees Barry, and the movie of Barry frames him as a hero, and the last shot is of his son kind of like smiling with satisfaction at how his father is betrayed, and we know the full story, but everyone else, for them, like Barry is immortalized as a legend.
Yeah, and I did kind of quickly just mention the time skips. They were a little weird for me.
Oh yeah, caught me
It
off guard.
Yeah, especially the one in the middle, because it they barely look like they aged, and
I
just
thought it was a dream. I legitimately thought it was a
yes.
dream.
But you know why you thought it was a dream is because in the previous seasons, when they were doing dreams and memories, it
Yes.
was in that same setting where
Yeah.
their new house was located. So I was just like, for a good like episode and a half, not sure if it was a dream or like some imagination, but he's really just like sitting back in prison or something like that. So then the other time skip at the end, I almost feel like I didn't need it.
Right.
I feel like it really could have just ended with like Barry being
Hmm.
ended because that's the end of him. But apparently, because there was a movie that came after, he was immortalized.
Yeah, and it's crazy because there's still 10 minutes left in the episode after Barry like exits, and I remember seeing that and being like, what is the rest of this episode gonna be? And then yeah, it's devoted to a moment for Sally to kind of see and like reacquaint it with her son who's now older, but it's mainly devoted to see this kind of fake movie that was made about about Barry's life, and just to show that like at the end Kusuno goes to jail for life, Barry is seen as a hero, um, Janet and like the person he gets revenge for Janice's death, but at the cost of being seen as the villain for the rest of his life. So then in that way, it's kind of like the bittersweet sweetness of it all.
It
But
does
yeah,
make me
I yeah.
wonder whether or not his son actually knew what his dad did. Like, did he ever know the truth, or did Sally hide that from him from the very beginning? Because they also let us know that she didn't want him to watch that movie.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
she,
I
at the
think
very least, didn't want her son to see his father in a good way.
yeah, and I think yeah because she never really saw him in that way. So it's pretty interesting, and like clearly that we establish that the son has a better like John has a better relationship with Barry than he does with Sally, and even at the end, his father did show up to save him. What I almost wonder is like in his mind, does he think that that's what actually happened, where his dad showed up and gunned everyone down, as opposed to everyone just gunning each other down? Because when he sees his dad is strapped to the nine, ready to go. So yeah, it was just like seeing that and like when it rolled credits, I mean, I just was kind of left kind of flabbergasted. Oh, I had a question for you. This was posed to me off stream before we started. This is what I was like messaging about. My friend was asking me what did I think about that scene with Sally in the house, where like the house like where like there's a person in the all black that's behind her and like walking behind her, and
Oh
then like the house all
yeah.
like shakes and stuff like that and everything. Like he was asking me what was my impression of that. So I guess yeah, I'll just pose that here. What was your impression of that scene?
I was super confused at first. I'm not really sure if it actually happened or not, or if it was a mixture of her imagination, her PTSD, and someone like attacking them. Because when Barry shows up, things are like all messed up, which would lead me to think that something did happen there. But she did see a car drive away, so maybe like a car hit the house and that's what she experienced. But in her mind, she's thinking about the trauma, the ghost that's haunting her of killing that guy. Because
Yeah.
she killed the guy, but she's not. It was a self defense kill, but it was also like a out of rage. Like she wasn't just defending herself. She was at the beginning, but then it kind of turned into some kind of rage. Like she could have stopped, she could have left, but it just really quick. It was kind of similar to that other show, Love and Death, on
Hmm.
HBO, where Candace Montgomery like killed um,
Her friend.
Betty Allen
Yeah.
um, with an axe until she died. But there was like 41 strikes, and did she really need that if it was self defense? So that's kind of like the same thing here. Like she could have stopped, and their excuse for Candace was that it was like a from an emotional trauma. But and
Hmm.
we all know that Sally had a lot of
Yeah.
rageful emotions
Issues.
going on that she probably funneled into that self defense murder.
Yeah, and I think at the end it's also very interesting because her son slept through all of it, right? So it's not even like her son couldn't corroborate like what happened. Like he went to sleep and then he woke up and the house was a mess. And part of the reason he was even asleep was because his mom gave him alcohol to shut him up. So yeah, that it's just crazy. We've been talking for a while here. I'm pretty sure that we could talk about more, but Did you have any like last minute things that we didn't get to like touch on here that you want to just mention?
No, I think that was it for me.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys want to hear more about this, and Harris discussed this and a lot more, you can check us out on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/C3Films. It's great to see you over there. But what did you guys think about Barry as a whole? Did you enjoy the final season as much as we did? Did you think that it was like a very cohesive story throughout seasons 1 through 4? Do you wish that there was a fifth season? Like, what are you going to watch now that Barry's done? Whatever you thought about this, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you guys would like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and I almost said Barry.